In this chapter, we're going to introduce a few new control structures that you can use in your programs. The first of these is going to be the switch statement, which is a limited type of if statement that you can use to make decisions. Let me demonstrate the general form of the switch in some comments here. So we'll start a comment, and here's how switch works. We'll begin with the keyword switch, followed by an integral expression. Now, what I mean by that is an integral expression is any expression that evaluates to an integral value. Now, normally it's going to be a variable of one of the integral types, like int or char or short. The ones that we've looked at the most are int and char. Both of those are integral data types. So mostly we'll limit our discussion to those two data types, int and char. And then inside the switch, we have what are called case statements. And the case statement will be a case, the keyword case, followed by another expression that you're going to compare to the integral value, followed by a colon. And then inside that colon will be a set of statements. And then if that first case clause is false, then you can do another case clause. Oops, I left out something right here. Let's add this back in. Followed by the keyword break. I'll explain how that works in a minute. And then you can have another set of statements, followed by the keyword break, and so on and so forth. You can have as many case clauses as you need. And that's followed by a default, which is optional, kind of like an else. And again, another set of statements, and then close. You don't need a break in the default because the flow will continue out of the switch after the set of statements and the default is ended. So let's look at this one more time before we look at an example. So we pass an integral expression to the switch, and then it compares that to another expression in each of the case clauses. That's where the decision making is. If the expression matches, then the set of statements is executed, followed by the break, which takes you out of the switch. If this first case clause doesn't match, then we look at the next case clause and continue on until we run out of case clauses, or if any of them are true, in which case the set of statements is executed and then the break takes you out. If none of the case clauses are executed and there is a default clause, then the set of statements in the default clause is executed, and then control passes from out of the switch statement. So let's take a look at an example. We're going to prompt the user to enter a letter grade, and then based on that letter grade, we're going to tell them what numeric grade they could have scored, what range they could have scored in to receive that letter grade. So the way we're going to do this is we need a char letter grade. We'll just say letter. And we're also going to have a string to prompt the user to enter. I'll explain that in a second also. Then we also need a scanner object. So we'll set that up now. Then we'll prompt the user to enter a letter grade. Letter grade equals input.next. I'll tell you what, we'll do next line, but next will work just fine. Then we're going to say letter is equal to letter grade char at 0. The reason we do that is it's not easy to get a char out of a user prompt from the keyboard. So we have to kind of do a little workaround here to get the user input in a string and then return the first character, which will be the only character, into that char variable. Now we can look at the switch. So we'll say switch on the letter. And so we'll say case A, system out print line 90 to 100. We'll keep this fairly concise. Break. And then case B. And again, we're assuming uppercase here that the user entered it in uppercase. Print line 80 to 89. Break. Case C, system out print line 70 to 79. Case D, whoops, I left out the break. Let's go back and add that in. case D, system out print line 60 to 69, break, and here we'll use the default. System out print line below 60. Close out the default, close out main, then close the class. So let's run the program, then we'll come back and discuss how it works again. Clear the screen, Java C, chap 16, part 1.java. Whoops, we left out. We have a couple too many here. So let's make sure we're right here. Close the switch, close main. So let's save and try again. Clear the screen, compile, chap 16, part 1. Enter a letter grade, let's do a B, 80 to 89. Let's run it again. Let's do an A, 90 to 100. Let's do it again, we'll do a D. Whoops. That backslash messed that up. Do it again. D, 60 to 69. We'll do it one more time with F. And actually, we could have used another case clause for the F and then default bad input, but it doesn't really matter here. So the way it works is when we enter a letter, first of all, we enter it as a string and then we pull it out into a char, which is right here. So then the switch statement looks at the letter. If it's an A, then it prints this statement and then breaks, and break always drops control out of the switch. Otherwise, then it checks to see if the letter is a B. If it is, then it executes these statements. Then it checks to see if it's a C, and if it is, then executes this set. Or it checks to see if it's a D. If it is, then it executes these statements. Otherwise, for any other input, it hits the default. The default is only selected if none of the other case clauses are true. So what we're doing is we're doing an exact comparison. We're saying letter equals A, or letter equals B, or letter equals C, or letter equals D. In fact, that's how you'd write it as an if-else if statement. You'd say if letter equals A, then system out print line 90 to 100. Else if letter equals B. So you see, it's just a different way to write a if-else if when you're doing just equality checking. The nice thing about the switch statement is it's a bit more concise and it seems a little bit more structured than an if-else if. In other words, it's not quite as messy. But it is equivalent to an if-else if where you're just checking for equality. Now, that ends this lesson on an introduction to the switch statement. In my next lesson, we're going to talk about how to creatively leave break out of a case clause to make your programs run a little bit more efficiently. And we'll see that in the next lesson.